How's Bob doing?
How can I answer that if you got the nerve to ask me?
It happened so long ago, I wasn't even born.
A song that doesn't pussyfoot around or turn a blind eye to human nature.
Who threw that glass through the street? Who did it?
I'm a translation of animal, my soul. Admit my return.
How about rat?
I'm afraid to go on the internet. I'm afraid some pervert's gonna lure me somewhere.
You want some eggs?
There's been a lot going on in the Bob Dylan world. I feel like it's been a really long week off between these shows. So much has happened.
Yeah, we should do a little roundup. Do you wanna start us off?
Sure. So this happened when I was camping, and I checked my phone for 1 minute, and I was like, what is going on? Eric Burden of the Animals posted an Instagram post of him, quote unquote, meeting Bob backstage at a show. And it's 4 AI generated pictures of him meeting current day Bob Dylan. And it's very strange.
It's a bizarre post.
Yeah, you and I were kind of speculating maybe Bob told them to do that, rather than taking a picture with him.
Yeah, it's just generated. Just generate the picture.
I saw some people on Reddit saying that the tour bus area is what that area looks like. So it's possible it's AI enhanced photos, but it just looks totally fake to me.
Yeah, but also apparently the venue looks nothing like it does in the picture. Because there's one picture of him backstage. Is at the Santa Barbara Bowl. I don't know what it's called. The venue. It's in Santa Barbara.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
And apparently the venue doesn't look like it does in the picture.
Right.
But what's so funny about this post is that the first couple of pictures really look like something that, you don't actually see Bob Dylan's face. Mm-hmm. He's wearing the hood. He's kind of he's kind of hidden behind the hood and just kind of shaking Eric Burden's hands. Mm-hmm. And, it feels realistic enough, although we've heard a lot of reports from people who have shaken Bob Dylan's hands. And I gotta say, his handshake looks too firm in that picture. That's why I'm leaning towards it being AI generated, because he's squeezing Eric Burden's hands. I'm like, ain't no way.
Yeah, I mean, they all look fake, but it is all has those weird specific details, like the jacket. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a really specific prompt. It's what are the pictures that fed into it? I was looking back at the question mark photos to see if there were enough similarities, but the jacket doesn't look totally the same. It doesn't have the North Face logo on it. So yeah, very strange. Why is he doing that? Why is he posting those pictures?
It throws up so many questions because, then you wonder, well, did he actually meet him and these are enhanced images, or did he meet them and they didn't get pictures, but then he was like, I'll just generate them, it's almost as good? Or is he just making the whole thing up? And it's which would be so weird. That would be so strange.
That's contributing to the Facebook boomer slop of those imagined tours of Dylan and Joan Baez and Bruce Springsteen and everyone. One last ride. Just imagine, wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great if this happened?
I think I sent you that picture. I don't know if Ray posted it or where I saw that initially, about Bob Dylan and Joan Baez both in bathing suits at the pool. It's so creepy. It's stop it.
Yeah.
It's not okay. It's really not all right.
Some crazy stuff is going on. And so, the fact that it's Eric Burden, a guy who could and has met Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
To do that, I don't know. That's why I'm just imagining Bob giving the okay or even the suggestion for it.
Well, we'll see if he ends up posting the pictures on his Patreon, which has also been, we haven't talked about the Patreon in a good while, actually. For a while, this was a steady topic on this podcast, and then we've given it a bit of a rest. But I think we should at least say that he has kept up the Patreon posts with real regularity. I mean, he posts at least twice a week. I think sometimes more. I will say, I'm a member of his Patreon, so I get the notification when a new post comes through. And I look at the headline and I never feel like checking them out. I'm like, oh, interesting. This is another short story, or this is, letters from, like, the last one was from between, what was it, Eddie Cochran and Hulk Hogan?
Yeah.
Actually, no, he's
I
posted
wanted,
one since then. I think he's posted one
yeah.
since then.
But it is funny. I wanted to talk about that because we
Yeah.
talked about Eddie Cochran on our last podcast with Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
And Hulk Hogan died when we were at the Bob Dylan conference, and I included that in my video roundup of the conference. So
Yep.
it's low key a conspiracy theory that he's obsessed with us. And that's where he's getting his inspiration, because his choice of the people is, we can concede, like, at least he's coming up with that, we assume, like, that's the one thing we can lean into, like, this is what he's interested in, this is who he wants to see talking to each other, writing letters to each other. So yeah,
That's true. And I will also say, and this maybe already takes us into another thing that we might want to talk about a bit more, but Bob Dylan has been playing 2 songs live that we also talked about on the podcast, You Ain't Going Nowhere, which we mentioned being a popular choice at tribute concerts, and then also I Shall Be Released, which we also mentioned.
yeah,
People were calling it Basement Tape Summer, but just saying, we also mentioned them on the podcast.
yeah,
So
those I
maybe
Shall
we
Be
should throw out.
Released are so awesome.
Yeah.
They're so beautiful. I love that he's singing that one again.
What was especially beautiful for me was, so he's played I Shall Be Released. I think he's played it twice so far. And a week ago, so last Tuesday, I went to see The Last Waltz at the Prince Charles Cinema here in London. And I had never seen The Last Waltz on the big screen. And it was so amazing. I mean, I wasn't prepared for how moving it would be to see that in the cinema, and like surrounded by people who also love the film and who love the music and love the band. And it was so special. And obviously also, it's Scorsese, so it's just like a great film, and like it's
Beautiful.
so funny, and the cuts are amazing, and just and all of that just like really is more palpable when you see it on the big screen, of course. But when he played I Shall Be Released, as the when they played I Shall Be Released kind of as the grand finale, I mean, not only did it hammer home once more just what an anthemic song that is. It's just so it's so big, and it has so much it has such an emotional payoff. But then also in my mind, like, I kept thinking, wow, and he's playing that live again now. It was really that it just felt like a full circle kind of moment, and it was beautiful.
That's the best. Yeah. I mean, it feels silly to say, it's like the most obvious thing. Such a beautiful song. It's like saying, wow, Bob Dylan's a great songwriter.
He's a great songwriter.
Yeah. What did you have next? There's still so much to get through already. 15
oh my
minutes
god.
in.
Yeah. So okay, what else did I have written down? So he brought back Trying to Get to Heaven, which, well, no, actually, let's start. Let me just say something else. I don't know. I have so much that I've got written down. But like, first, one thing that I wanted to talk about for a while actually is that this happened weeks ago, but I don't think we've talked about this yet. That one of the Ionic recordings of Gotta Serve Somebody leaked. And for those who don't remember, the Ionic original series was this project, or is this project presumably by T-Bone Burnett, who recorded a series of artists, including Bob Dylan, and these recordings would then be sold in either unique or very limited copies on this new technology. And the whole idea was kind of to restore the value back to music. And the first recording of that sort that sold was a re-recording of Blowing in the Wind by Bob Dylan. And it sold in 2022 or 2023 for £1.2 million at Christie's here in London. leading up to it, you could actually go to Christie's and listen to the recording in this listening booth, because after that record was sold, no one apart from the person who owned it would be allowed to hear it again, because the whole point was that it only exists in this one copy and it wouldn't be on any streaming services. I hope I'm explaining this in a way that's vaguely understandable.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And I went to listen to it, and it was really cool. You know, you had this really a special listening experience. You're in this booth, and it was very ceremonial. You know, they hand you these headphones, and you know you might only have like one chance to listen to the song unless you have hundreds of thousands or millions of pounds to spend on this one record, which I don't. But I was really happy that I got to hear it. I got to hear it twice, actually. And then I went to the auction where it sold for 1.2 million pounds. And there was a lot of, at the time, there was a lot of conversation surrounding, Bob Dylan as one of the most bootlegged artists, where I think a lot of his fans almost see it as a duty to the fans, to culture, that all performances are in some way preserved and are being made accessible. And so I think there was some, not a lot, but there was some kind of frustration that this would be a performance that would never be heard outside of those walls, or outside of the walls of the person who owns it, because they're not allowed to put it on streaming or anything. And there was like this, I would say, a kind of poetry or poetic justice, however you may call it, that actually during the auction, a recording of the song leaked onto YouTube. Someone had gone to one of those listening parties and had surreptitiously recorded it on their phone and decided to put it like on YouTube, obviously in bad quality, or not great quality, which again is this kind of irony for a recording where the whole point is that it's pristine. So anyway, that's the story of Blowing in the Wind, the record that sold for 1.2 millions. And now recently a recording of Gotta Serve Somebody from those same sessions also leaked, and it's so cool. I love it.
Yeah. I just saw a new upload of the Blowing in the Wind went up like yesterday, and it was labeled as a Shadow Kingdom outtake, but that's not what it is. It's the Ionic sessions.
Yeah, which I think were different sessions.
Yeah.
Because I think the instrumentation is different. And I do hope that we maybe get a better recording of Gotta Serve Somebody, which again, I think is also I think there's one version floating around that's labeled as Shadow Kingdom outtake, but I think it's also from the Ionic Originals series, or it might be a Shadow Kingdom outtake. Either way, I'm not sure how this leaked. I'm not sure who could have leaked these. Obviously, for selfish reasons, I'm happy they're out there because they're really interesting. And also, I love this rewritten version of Gotta Serve Somebody. You know what I'm going to say. The extensively rewritten lyrics first appeared as part of Mondo Scripto, Jazz Hands. Yeah, and I think they're really great. I really love them, and I think it gives such a different color to the song. It makes it like a lot more playful, and apparently, it's made Bob Dylan sing the song a lot again, because he's played it a lot since the Rough and Rowdy Ways tour.
Yeah. And speaking of which, there's a new guitarist sitting in on the tour. Julian Lang has been playing a couple shows lately. That's interesting. Band switch up.
Yeah. Is it Julian? It's Julian Lage. Lage. I'm not actually sure how to pronounce it.
Julian Lage. Correction, it's Julian Lage.
Oh,
I nailed it. No.
No, I know there's a lot of people who are like super excited about this, and I've been chatting with a bunch of people who have recommended me records of his that I've been wanting to check out. but I haven't figured out yet how to say his name. So apologies to all your Julian Lage heads.
Yeah. And then the big one was the New York Times article that Bob Dylan contributed to. We haven't talked about this yet, but this
we
was
have
like
been fed. We have been fed recently with Bob Dylan content.
Yeah, and it was so amazing to see.
Yes.
This is, I would say, the biggest thing that has happened, because it is a Bob Dylan piece of writing that is seemingly AI free. It's very Bob Dylan voice and meaning and content. He contributed to this New York Times article that was, I didn't realize this was the framing of this at first, but it's Donald Trump turning 80. Here are some octogenarians and above speaking on like advice for Trump in what it's like to be an octogenarian. But Bob Dylan was the first one in the article, and he doesn't mention Trump at all. It's just what it's like to be an old person. And it was a beautiful piece of writing. I assume a lot of the people who listen to this will have read it already, but if you haven't, definitely go check it out. It has some
read it? Should we read it?
Yeah, do you have it up?
So he was asked about the best and the worst things about being 80.
Yeah.
And he says, the best thing about being 80 is that you outlive the clocks that have been chasing you. It's freedom from that lie that anything was ever under control. You don't chase the parade anymore. You're an old king from some vanished country. You're harder to program. You're not rushing to become anything, and you're not haunted by things that you did. You're haunted by how little of it really mattered in the way you thought it would. And then the worst thing about being 80 is that you still want to say yes to everything, but the world moves without asking. The old fire in your heart still tells you to do this and that, but your body says, we already did it. Also, nothing surprises you. It sounds like a luxury, but it's not. And you've also run out of illusions. People treat you like either you've solved something or you've lost something, and you haven't. You see life repeating itself everywhere. The really worst part about being 80 is that you find at last you've got an understanding of something that might have altered everything in the past had it come at a time when something could still be altered. When you're young, you think that time moves forward. At 80, you know that it doesn't. It stands still. We're the ones that move.
It's so good. It's so beautiful. I'm just gonna. I have just had a massive deja vu. Also, some ink spilled on my arm. I was wondering what that was. Yeah. I just realized I just had a deja vu. I actually read this at the beginning of the nostalgia episode. Oh,
in the podcast version.
You did?
Because this came, yeah, but only on the podcast version, like not on YouTube.
Really?
I just remembered that. Because this came out, like, I think the day before I published that episode.
Oh, right. When you're publishing it. Why didn't we talk about it last week? I don't remember that.
Well, because we recorded the episode a few days before I published
right.
nostalgia episode.
That makes sense.
Yes, that's
right.
But yeah, now I'm like,
wow. We haven't talked about it yet.
Anyway, it's fine. But yeah, it's so beautiful.
Yes, it's what you want it's what I want from Bob Dylan, is to hear his perspective on his longevity and his steady place as a person in culture for 60 years.
Yeah.
And I feel like that reveals so much about those two things. And it also is so similar to the writing on Rough and Rowdy Ways, I think, about being an old king.
From some vanished country. That's so good.
Vanished country. Yeah, we were really fed.
I also really loved a tweet that Harry Hugh made, where he said something about Bob Dylan, who's influenced the arts as much as anybody, looking back on his life, saying, "You're haunted by how little of it really mattered in the way you thought it would. Many people could speak those words, but there's nobody who could make them land harder."
Yeah.
It is so true, because it's not just referring to things, oh, I was so hung up on this thing, but it turns out it didn't matter that much. But even like the positive things, how much did it matter? I don't know. It's um
Yeah, to
leading us back
him,
to,
for him to be saying that is just so
yeah,
wild.
yeah, yeah. It's really, and yeah, and it's interesting to that he even participated in this piece, that he was like, yeah, I've got something to say about being 18.
It's always a surprise when he decides to come down from his throne, from the vanished country, to say
Yeah.
something, to contribute, to comment on anything. I mean, yeah, and I love that it doesn't talk about Trump at all, obviously. Um, yeah, the other responses which did, it's like, well, what do you want them to say? Like, you're gonna give that guy advice, and he, like, as if he would listen.
Yeah.
It's such a silly idea for a piece, and then to think about the pitch, that like, what did they tell Bob Dylan that intrigued him enough to contribute? I guess it's just something he thinks about anyway.
I actually came across an interview today, which I will quote from again later, but where he mentions Donald Trump. And I thought that was so interesting. This is an interview from, I think, 2006. Let me check again. Yeah, this is a Rolling Stone interview with Jonathan Latham from 2006. And he says, I mean, who's the last individual performer you can think of? Elton John, maybe? I'm talking about artists with the willpower to not conform to anybody's reality but their own. Patsy Cline and Billy Lee Riley, Plato and Socrates, Whitman and Emerson, Slim Harpo and Donald Trump. It's a lost art form. I don't know who else does it beside myself, to tell you the truth.
Whoa. That's a crazy list.
Yeah.
He loves talking about Patsy Cline. It makes me think he just likes the sound of the name.
It's a great sounding name, to be fair.
Patsy like Patsy Cline, always coming up in interviews and songs. That's wild.
Yeah.
So,
and he's referred to Donald Trump in his revisionist art series as well. I mean, it doesn't surprise me, because I mean, long before Donald Trump was president, he was a cultural figure. He stood for something. Yeah. So I mean, I'm not surprised that someone who is so interested in kind of American culture and what it signifies and how it's shaped by different figures, that Donald Trump is like one of those people that he's aware of and aware of their influence,
And what he's talking about is kind of like people's branding, like people's impact on culture in a way that makes them like their deepest essence is coming across, or something like that, or it's distilled and they're true to that essence of what you perceive them as, which is also very interesting coming from Bob Dylan.
But it is wild that he basically not only like names him alongside Plato and Socrates, but also that he basically is referring to him as an artist.
Right. Yeah, that's the crazy part. You don't expect him to show up in that list.
Because at first he says performers, and at that I totally get. Like, I think absolutely,
he was on TV.
I think exactly. Like, he's a performer. I mean, he still is. But an artist is an interesting. Anyway, I just thought that was super interesting, and I just
it is.
That's
a great poll.
And so the other thing that I just wanted to mention, because I listened to a recording earlier, did you listen to that new version of Trying to Get to Heaven that he's also just brought back for the first time in, I think, like 8 years or something?
Yeah, that you just sent me.
Yeah, isn't it good? Isn't it beautiful?
It's great. He's doing interesting switches in these set lists.
Yeah, what I thought was so interesting about that performance, or that particular arrangement, is how faithful that arrangement is to the one that appears on Time Out of Mind. Because I've looked at the comments, and people are saying, oh, he's going back to the original arrangement, but what I find so fascinating about that is, when we're talking about Bob Dylan, what does original arrangement mean? He's played the song so many times through the years in very different arrangements. For a while there was this very jazzy arrangement with kind of diminished chords. I saw a really interesting arrangement of it in, I think, 2008 or 9 or something. But now this one is so similar to Time Out of Mind that I've been wondering, did he actually go back and listen to the album?
Mm.
Did he, because how else does he remember what the quote unquote original sounded like?
Right.
And I think that's maybe interesting in the context of what we'll be talking about today, if we ever get to the question.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking that would be a great transition into the question. Do you want to kick us off?
My name is Laura Tenchett.
My name is Rebecca Slayman, and this is the
Bob
Dylan Hotline.
Where we answer your questions about all things Bob.
Today, our question is from Jamie Katz.
Take it away, Jamie.
Is the idea of the album the best way for us to consider Bob Dylan's work? It seems to me that the album was just a historical moment that's passing now. There was a technology, the LP, but there was also a commercial marketing system. That's what created the album. And then soon it's going to be like, Dad, what's an album? Well, son. So I think a lot of these Bob Dylan issues of what songs didn't make it, what songs weren't released, the bootlegs, the idea of the different versions of the songs, all these issues will sort of fade away once we get rid of the idea of the album. Just like a lot of issues around just Mozart, for a random example, fade away when you don't think about the royal court and how that was set up and are just considering his music in itself. I don't know. Just want to hear your guys' thoughts about that. Bye.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie. This is a great question, and it leads into our bigger questions about Bob Dylan's perception and what we think of as the canon of Bob Dylan. What counts? What doesn't count? Will the album go away? I personally think, first off, that the album is it's so great, such a useful tool mostly for other artists other than Bob Dylan. But when it comes to Bob Dylan, it's really a big question mark, because so many famous examples, as he said, of songs being left off albums, of albums not being as cohesive or produced the way people want, and so you go to the bootlegs. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about, Bob Dylan and the Beatles and, that crop of artists coming up. And I'm guessing that it was that generation when the album really became a thing. I mean, certainly when the album was kind of being elevated to an art form. And yeah, I think it is really, it is a great way for artists to document a moment in time where they're at as artists, to kind of have a batch of songs and say, like, at this point in time, these songs are my most recent and maybe my best ones. Here you go.
Here's an era where I'm going for this kind of sound, writing about these kind of things.
Yeah. And I mean, we're also in a, with an artist like Bob Dylan, I think it's especially interesting to think about albums, as we will explore, because I think albums mean a certain thing to him, but also like his albums have become in many cases so iconic. And with an artist who has had such a long and prolific career, it feels like almost every day it's an anniversary of one album getting released. I mean,
Totally.
and there are lots of people online that are really good at keeping track of these anniversaries. I mean, we've just had the Blonde on Blonde 60th anniversary. But also, I think
Rough and Rowdy Ways just
Rough
had
and Rowdy
anniversary.
Ways, 6th anniversary. Modern Times is going to be 20 years old in the autumn. So Desire, also 50 years of Desire is this year. So there's Hatzafire? Or was that next year?
87. Yeah.
Okay, next year. Thank
Oh
God,
my
we'll be
God.
celebrating.
Thank you for flagging that. I need to get planning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but so I think on the one hand, obviously Bob Dylan's albums mean so much to people, and that is a beautiful thing. And I
Mhm.
think that speaks to his identity as Columbia recording artist, which is a moniker that he obviously is proud of as well. For years, that's how he ironically almost had himself announced when he went out on stage before playing a live set. He was announced as Columbia recording artist Bob Dylan,
Yeah.
um, which also has like a really old-timey feel.
It does. I feel like I only ever hear that like on the Macy's Day Parade on Thanksgiving. They'll for these random artists no one cares about. They're like Columbia recording artist Tate McRae, whatever.
I have no reference. That tells I'm
That's for
not
the
familiar with the
Americans
Macy's
out there.
parade.
That's just for the Americans. Which is it's an old timey show busy kind of deal. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's such an
yeah,
old timey thing. We don't even think about labels that much anymore, which I think
because
what
it's
we're
all the same label now, basically.
yeah, I feel like they were still relevant like 2000s, 2010s, people still kind of had some loyalty. Yeah, I listened to Drag City or I listened to
Hmm.
Fueled by Ramen for like the pop punk emo kids out there. Uh but yeah, and when you think about recording artists, it's just so wild to think about that the recorded music has only existed for like 100 years, and these
Yeah.
things that are like staples of what we know of as music are all
Hmm.
extremely new, even
Yeah.
though we feel so like connected to history with them.
And I think that's why Jamie's question is so interesting, uh, because the majority of recorded history is so dominated by the record, the album, the LP, the long player, however you want to, title it. Um, that I think we just assume that's maybe also how it's always going to be, or that's kind of that
Yeah.
that just shapes our understanding of recorded music and what we also like what we consider the canon of pop music, of
Hmm.
recorded music. And it's it is interesting that, I mean, streaming has changed everything. I mean, it's changed so many things, but the album is still clinging on, as
Yeah.
at least that's the chosen format for artists. I think artists still want to create albums, and I think it makes
Yeah.
sense. I think
And
it's very.
it's also because of them, it's like become the marketing. It's about like an album cycle, an album
Mhm.
promotion cycle has become such a institution and way of artists promoting their stuff, and why they would go on tour is still like to promote a new album.
Mhm.
um and it's
And
just because what would fit on a record.
yeah, and also like because of what a record really symbolizes. I mean, we already said, it's the latest collection of songs, but also
Mhm.
it's not just that, right? It's
Yeah.
about storytelling. It's about what can um what's the world of the record. It's wanting to not, I mean, ideally, and I think it's like maybe not like that for every artist, but I think for a lot of artists, it is about wanting to present a specific vision,
Hmm.
with an album. This is where I'm at. This is, yeah, I mean, you say like different eras. If you look at, for example, the Beatles, every album signified a world of its own. And the same with Bob Dylan. I mean, if the leaps and bounds that he made aesthetically, musically, lyrically, from album to album, uh,
Mm.
is really, really goes to show why, that we're kind of lucky that he had the opportunity to cram a collection of songs into one record, put it
Mm.
out, move on, do it again, you know because I think like maybe if you, I don't know, it's
it's like a definition of a time. It's like a way to
Yes, it's a
constrain
document.
time. Exactly. It's like a season of an artist's career is these album cycles.
That's such a
So
good way of putting it. Yeah.
thank you. Yeah. And so it is so much more than what songs go on them. More than a collection of songs, I should say.
Yeah. That said, Bob Dylan has made some, as you said, truly iconic records, but he does not really seem to be someone who enjoys laboring over the studio recording process as some other recording artists do, right? And I think that has shaped what his records are like, what his records sound like. I would even say, like, you could maybe say that he has a kind of love-hate relationship with making records.
Yeah.
And I think this has always been true. And in part, I think that's because, he comes from the folk tradition. He also loves those records that are very much a recording in time and aren't too fancy, don't get too like fancy with studio trickery. And then also I think because that's just the kind of performer that he is, as we've spoken about before, he likes to kind of follow his instinct, follow his vision, and then move on, right?
Yeah.
Not to be
And
too
also,
precious.
Yeah. And also working with other musicians, it's like he has some vision in his head, but doesn't really communicate what that is. And it leads to long and frustrating sessions for everyone if they don't keep up with what he's got going on. And yeah, like you said, it's always been that way. It's depicted in Complete Unknown that he doesn't stay still enough to be captured on the mic. He's just so in the moment.
I have a great quote for this, actually, from the same Rolling Stone interview from 2006.
Great.
Bob Dylan said, "I don't like to make records. I do it reluctantly. I didn't feel like I wanted to be overproduced anymore." This is about him working as Jack Frost, his own producer hat, which he has donned since Love and Theft. I felt like I've always produced my own records anyway, except I just had someone there in the way. I feel like nobody's going to know how I should sound except me anyway. Nobody knows what they want out of players except me. Nobody can tell a player what he's doing wrong. Nobody can find a player who can play, but he's not playing like I can. I can do that in my sleep. So, I think this is a really interesting quote because on the one hand, I think it speaks to me, it sounds like he's basically saying that it's not just about what a producer is doing, but also what a producer is not doing. And the same goes for the players. It's not just about what they're playing, but also what they're not playing. And so it's but there is kind of like a mystical air to it that he is kind of trying to get at with this, which I think is really interesting.
This is reminding me of Bob's experience doing Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, which is when he was supposed to, write the score, and he ended up doing a lot of it during filming. And there were some instances of like him bringing everyone wanted to see Bob Dylan record, and it ended up being like an all-night party in the studio, and no one was ready the next day for filming, and some people were really mad about it because Bob it takes him a long time for him to be satisfied with the recording sessions in ways that non-artists don't understand. And it's like how we've talked about how he struggles on camera is because he doesn't deliver lines the same way twice ever. And he doesn't play songs the same way twice ever. And that probably adds to the tediousness of it for other people, and also the arbitrariness of what take he chooses to be on an album. There's several instances on Blonde, which some say is the best record he's ever done, where he just flubs a line, where he just starts singing the wrong line. But it was, I guess, the best take, and he just goes with it.
Yeah, because I think, perfection is not necessarily what you go for. I think, when it comes to the magic of art and magic of music, sometimes you need to go for the vibe, sometimes you have to go for, the take where the band was really cooking, where everything just felt cohesive and it just felt like everyone was locked in. And who cares in that case? I mean, like, when you think about it, like, that's more important than whether a line is flubbed. And nowadays they'll just punch him in, and he just does the line again. Back then, I respect that he was like, actually, no, let's go with this take. I preferred that. Who cares about that one line, as long as you kind of recover. And like, sometimes you don't, there's that one take of She's Your Lover now, which is such a great take, and then he messes up the lyrics in a way that he just can't recover from, when it says like, now your mouth cries wolf, but obviously it was supposed to be now your eyes cry wolf, and then he just kind of like loses it, and then it all falls apart. But that's
and I think it's a rite of passage for every hardcore Dylan fan to listen to that entire CD of all the Like a Rolling Stone outtakes. It's like 25 tracks at least, and how many times he messes up through the dumbs of bime in your prime.
Man, that's a difficult song. I mean, like, the lyrics are pretty complex,
God, it's so great.
But this also gets at the other aspect of what Jamie was asking about. Because what does it add to our understanding of the song Like a Rolling Stone? What does it add to how we think about Highway 61 Revisited as an album that is led by like a Rolling Stone, that we now have these 25 outtakes? I would argue that any Dylan fan who goes like a little bit below the surface, any Dylan fan who's like quite familiar with Infidels, probably thinks of Infidels in the context of the songs that were left off the album. I mean, when do you talk to someone about Infidels without them bringing up Blind Willie McTell?
Right.
And I think that in of itself is kind of interesting. And I think this is actually one thing that I've thought about a little bit with streaming, right? Because I mean, I got into Bob Dylan before streaming was a thing, because I'm old. And the way that I heard about certain songs was because they were on certain compilations, right? So, When I Paint My Masterpiece was on the More Greatest Hits compilation. Abandoned Love was on Biograph. And when everything was put on streaming, I understand that they didn't necessarily want to bother with like all these different compilations, so they just put all of these songs on sidetracks. So there's like this insane treasure trove of an album called Sidetracks. On streaming,
wide range of years all these songs are from.
And there it's kind of, there's very little context to what Sidetracks actually is. I mean, you can look it up on Wikipedia or whatever, but for me, I still think about what collection they were originally on, and to me that kind of gives context to when they entered the public consciousness,
when the public heard them.
It's like, oh, Caribbean Wind again, like Biograph. And then you kind of, I don't know,
it's probably also led to like when you were picking an album before streaming or whatever, you want to cast a wide net. You want to get, that's why like greatest hits albums exist, is because you want to get the good songs. And getting an acclaimed album is a higher chance of that collection of songs. So it kind of was about that. Wow. I'm going back on what I said earlier, but every Dylan fan is kind of an editor in their mind of Dylan's albums. Even before this was all so accessible, like, oh, it's great except for that one song. And that's probably why his later stuff isn't as examined in the popular culture. If you hear like the album overall is bad, you're less likely to hear like the gems on it, because why would you spend money on it? And yes, streaming cannot be overstated enough, the impact it's had on younger people and everyone discovering all these other Bob Dylan songs.
And I think the idea of the canon is complicated by the many releases of like the bootleg series and so on. And I think what you're saying is really true. It turns the fan into an editor of sorts, where you can put together your own version of
my own version of Bob. Yeah.
Yeah. Be it of infidels or of self-portrait or with Springtime in New York, you can also put together, imagine a version of Empire Burlesque without the 80s production.
Yeah.
Or, Fragments gives us a completely new aesthetic for an album like Time Out of Mind. So I do think that Bob Dylan is actually a really interesting artist to think about when we're thinking about, what the album still signifies and what the album still means, because the fan demand for anything that falls outside of the entity of the album has been made available.
Right.
And I think Bob Dylan himself has a difficult relationship with that. I have another quote about this actually.
Yeah.
Where he talks about bootlegs. And he says, I still don't like bootleg records. There was a period of time when people were just bootlegging anything on me because there was nobody ever in charge of the recording session. All my stuff was being bootlegged high and low, far and wide. They were never intended to be released, but everybody was buying them. So my record company said, well, everybody else is buying those records. We might as well put them out. And then he says, it's like taking a painting by Manet or Picasso, going to his house and looking at half-finished paintings and grabbing it and selling it to people who are Picasso fans. The only fans I know I have are the people who I'm looking at when I play Night After Night.
When he plays Night After Night from Hearts of Fire? Those are the true fans?
The only true fans are the Hearts of Fire fans. It's only you, Rebecca.
Night After Night. Wow. See, I think he's talking to me through these quotes.
Bob, please confirm by playing Night After Night live in concert now.
Please. Man, that is fascinating. I mean, it totally makes sense how what he considers the real experience of music is what's in the moment, what's live, the relationship between him and the audience.
Yeah, and actually there's another quote where he said, this was like an interview for No Direction Home, where he said, the ideal performances of the songs would then come on stages throughout the world. Very few could be found on any of my records. Every second, reaching the audience is what it's all about. So this kind of I think that there's like a bit of a I don't know if I can call it like a dichotomy, but it is kind of interesting. Or maybe it's not a dichotomy. I mean, like on the one hand, I think it makes sense. Bob Dylan wants to make a record mostly for the sake of putting songs out there, but then the songs kind of keep growing, keep changing, keep evolving in live performance, right? And for that reason, because he doesn't consider the song finished in the moment of recording, the album is also, not as definitive as some other artists might consider it to be, right? I mean, I think that's like that's really what I'm getting from this.
So yeah, Bob doesn't care about albums, and also the fans don't care about albums, because we're all just like, well, if he doesn't care, let's mix and match and pick whatever we like best from it. Because there's, even though we love Bob, there's some things we disagree with about those decisions, which seem so spur of the moment or arbitrary to him.
Would you say there's something liberating about that, about taking the authority away from the album, and maybe even that the fans are encouraged to be editing because they get this feeling that Bob Dylan doesn't consider the album like as definitive?
I feel like it's annoying because when you're like an evangelist and you're trying to get people to listen, they're like, what album should I listen to? And I'm just like, well, whatever kind of thing you like. I don't know. There's so many different things to choose from. But also I'm not faithful to the albums. So that makes it difficult. And like with Infidels, I would cut Neighborhood Bully, absolutely. And that's in the canon of Bob Dylan albums. And yeah, I mean, as far as authority, who is the authority? Each individual person is then their own authority.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's like the whole death of the author, birth of the reader, right? And I think, I think especially when the Dylan camp puts out the bootleg series and puts all those alternate versions out there, then I think that encourages the fans to mix and match. And again, and I think when something happens, like be it the More Blood, More Tracks release, where they put out the entire New York session of Blood on the Tracks, that kind of, I mean, it seems to be kind of like an acknowledgement of like, yeah, this is worth listening to, like have it all.
Right.
And or the complete remix of Time Out of Mind, you know, it kind of like suggests that Dylan himself doesn't really think the original album is the definitive version, you know?
Right. And it does mean that those who are like us, become obsessed with Bob Dylan, are rewarded for these deep dives going beyond the albums, what you would think of as the canon for other artists. It just gets richer and richer the more you dig into the alternate takes and alternate songs.
Yeah, and it's also not just that the alternate takes sometimes provide us with takes that we maybe prefer. I also think that sometimes it also makes you appreciate the quote unquote original, you know, sometimes it makes you appreciate the album version because you're like, wow, I can't believe he got from that to this, you know. I mean, I think that's certainly what it's like with like a Rolling Stone, because you hear all the other takes and they're great, but there is something about like that finished version that just it hits different, you know. I mean, you really think like, wow, this is like something happened in that moment, you know, this is lightning in a bottle.
This makes me think of what I think Joan Baez talks about in No Direction Home, of people just wanting more and more from Bob, more than he was willing to give. And it's so true. We take everything we can, and it makes sense that Bob doesn't understand why you would want something half finished, why anyone would want a half finished Picasso. But that's another thing where I would invoke the death of the author. Like, once he makes that art, it's ours, it's out there, and we want
is it though? I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, please.
No, but like, I mean, go ahead.
You mean about it being ours once he makes it?
Yeah, if he makes it, but he chooses not to put it out.
Well, this goes back to our conversation with with bootlegs in general, recording at shows. Like, he's not the authority that on our belief that he is Shakespeare, that he is like the greatest artist ever, and him not seeing that, I think, is just a detriment to the preservation of his work.
Yeah, and I want to come back to Shakespeare. Actually, I have like something to say about that as well. But like,
sure,
I think I'm just like posing this question. I don't have an answer to it necessarily, but isn't there a difference between a live performance that maybe gets bootlegged, which is a performance in front of people, and the creative process that happens behind closed doors that isn't necessarily for public consumption? Because like part of me kind of thinks, I mean two minds about it, right? Because like on the one hand I'm thinking, well, you know, artists' notebooks, artists' sketchbooks, artists
people want to know more
documentation
about the creative process.
Yeah, exactly. Like in a way I would say that is it's part of the oeuvre, and therefore should be available
Yeah.
to the public. On the other hand, I'm also thinking about the impact that it might have on a working artist if you're
Mhm.
constantly potentially stifled by the knowledge that like any misstep that you or any experimentation that you make
Mhm.
um, will eventually be out there, and then you have to kind of like face that and you know
Yeah.
be confronted with something that you maybe later think like, oh God, what was I thinking, you know? And I'm just wondering whether it's a yeah, I don't
Ethical.
know. I have empathy with an artist who would struggle with that, is all I'm saying.
I understand that. But it most famously, I guess, happened with the basement tapes where all these working documents were out there without his permission, and eventually they did release it.
Hmm.
And then he continued to work after that, and
Yeah.
he doesn't. I just with Bob specifically, he doesn't seem to understand like what all the fuss is about sometimes, uh, and maybe it wouldn't. I mean, clearly from these quotes, he doesn't like it, but maybe it wouldn't stifle him specifically that in
Mm.
that way.
Yeah, maybe this attitude of not being precious and kind of moving on
Hmm.
is in part the result of
Yeah.
knowing that you just have to let go of an
Right.
idea that didn't work out, you know, and like not be embarrassed if
And he
something.
and he does have regrets with the with the official release too. I mean, he regretted the first album he ever recorded. He was like, I don't know
Mhm.
why I picked those songs.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, he clearly has a way. He doesn't linger on those things. He moves past them, being in the moment. But I get what you're saying about like the ethics and the impact that would have on an artist.
Yeah. I'm gonna read you one more quote that I thought
Yeah.
was interesting. This is also, I think, from the I think I think this might also be from the Rolling Stone interview. Um, he says, "I don't listen to any of my records. When you're inside of it, all you're listening to is a replica. I don't know why somebody would look at the movies they make. You don't read your books, do you?" So saying this to someone who writes books, you know. Um, so I think that's an interesting perspective as well, you know,
Yeah.
that a record for a recording artist is really about the process of making it. Whereas, like, for the fans, it's the finished product that they
Mm-hmm.
consume. But, like, for the artists, it's really more about the process. And I think actually thinking about it like that, to me, explains a lot about how Bob Dylan approaches recording, you know, that he is actually less thinking about the finished product and more kind of like trying to convey a certain mood or a certain feeling, um,
Yeah.
and that's what he's chasing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's helpful to think about that with movies, as he brought
Hmm.
up. Like when you think about a movie set, it's so different than what you see on the screen, and the experience of making it is so different than the experience of watching it.
Yeah. Um. Oh wait, do you have something else?
Which is interesting. Back at the beginning of the conversation, when you were talking about how he is performing a song according to the original arrangement of the album.
Hmm.
Um, Is he going back and
Exactly.
listening to it? Because he does. I mean, we know that he flips through his own lyric books, but I feel like we haven't heard that he listens to those original recordings to hear them again.
That was exactly my thought. It was
Yeah.
exactly my thought when I heard both the new arrangement, the new old arrangement of Trying to Get to Heaven, and also a little bit I Shall Be Released, which is also
Mm-hmm.
quite faithful. It
Mm.
really made me wonder whether he's potentially spent some time with like those recordings, you know,
Yeah.
or maybe just listened once and was like, how did I do it back then? You know, like, oh, I want to
Yeah.
play the song again, but how does it go again? You know, and then he
Mm.
goes to the album version. But I think that's really interesting. Um,
Could it also be that he says to the band, "We're gonna do this song," and all they know to go on is that album version, and then he's like, "That's good enough."
yeah. Yeah.
That
It's
could
like,
also
Tony,
be
how
it.
did Trying to Get to Heaven go again? Like, you played on
Yeah.
that record. You've played this
Right.
song with me, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but I also think when we're talking about um, the concept of an album with an artist like Bob Dylan, I think it's also really interesting to compare that concept to the concept of a set list.
Mm-hmm.
Because really the difference between an album and a set list is, an album is a new collection of songs that is presented kind of like for the first time, which is what makes them notable. Whereas a set list is a collection of songs where the artist draws on the entire back catalog. And in both cases, you really try to arrange the order in a way that is kind of internally coherent, right? And this made me think about our friends Aaron Callahan and Code Carney wrote a book about set lists that we've spoken about a couple of times here on the podcast. And our other good friend Grady Heron, whom we keep mentioning, wrote a beautiful essay in that set list book. And at the beginning of his essay, I think he sums up what a set list is in a really beautiful way. And I wanted to read you a little bit of that. So he writes, Bob Dylan's live performances are a form of theater. During his 1978 tour, Dylan spoke to Mark Rowland about his dramaturgical conception of stage shows. To me, it's like to me, oh, you're going to love this. To me, it's like a Shakespeare play, he told the interviewer, explaining how, quote, the songs all run together in a way that if you was going to sit down and break them all down, you'd have some kind of story there. You really would. It's a play, end quote. And he repeats this a couple of times when he compares it to a Shakespeare play in a couple of instances. And in 2015, he spoke to the interviewer Robert Love, and he says, quote, what kind of song do I need to play in my show? What don't I have? It always starts with what I don't have. I need all kinds of songs, fast ones, slow ones, minor key, ballads, rumbas, and they all get juggled around during a live show. I've been trying for years to come up with songs that have the feeling of a Shakespearean drama, end quote.
So true.
So I think this is really fascinating in this context. And at some point, he even said that he really only makes albums so that he has songs to play live. And I think when we look at Bob Dylan's career, this makes so much sense because he has devoted so much more time to playing live than he has to being in the studio. And for a lot of artists, it's the other way around. But Bob Dylan is first and foremost a live performer, and even his album sessions are really only trying to capture the magic that you can get from playing live. And I just thought that this was a really interesting thing that I just wanted to add, that when he conceives of a set list, he tries to craft it in the, with almost like a drama in mind, or with a plot, with tension, with a kind of story in mind. And I just thought that was interesting. And I was wondering whether you have any thoughts on this kind of in the context of when we're talking about albums.
Yeah, it is really interesting to think about theater because it makes me think of these live shows. He reaches so many fewer people than albums and recorded things, and even just his lyrics, that people have a sort of entitlement about what they experience with Bob Dylan as like the truth about him. And it's funny that, like, I love how you said he's first and foremost a live artist. That's what he is. That's what he does. But to the general public, that's not what they think of him as. And if anything, they say,
you're so right.
He's terrible live. His greatest thing is his songwriting. Even like some fans feel that way. But it's the same thing of like the experience of recording an album is different than the product. The experience of performing all those shows, to him, that's the number one thing that takes up his time. But because it reaches so many fewer, does that make sense? So many fewer.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
I'm like stuck on that phrase. So many less people than people who interact with the canon of Bob Dylan's work. And it's like that with theater too. The Tonys were recently, which are like the Broadway awards. And it's always interesting. It's, Broadway is only in New York. It's very few people see it compared to the people that are watching like the Tonys broadcast. And that is just like an advertisement for coming to see the live performance. And no one would say about theater that like recorded instances of the performances are the art form itself. Like it is indivisible from that live thing. So it really makes sense that's how Bob Dylan sees performance and his performance as being what he is actively doing on a stage or even in a studio. That performance is so much more important than any recorded version of it.
I have a great quote for this actually, which
oh my gosh, you're full of these quotes.
I know. Well, because I was reading interviews earlier, and I mean, Bob Dylan interviews are so great. I mean, that I think they're so fascinating to read. And I came across this one quote that truly baffled me when I read it. I nearly sent it to you because I was like, what is he saying? But I think it's actually really interesting in the context of this, right?
Yeah.
So this is also 2006. This is the same Rolling Stone interview. My God. He was really on fire. So Dylan muses on the fate of art in posterity. Quote, how many people can look at the Mona Lisa? You ever been there? I mean, maybe like 3 people can see it at once. And yet, how long has that painting been around? More people have seen that painting than have ever listened to, let's name somebody. I don't want to say Alicia Keys, say Michael Jackson. More people have ever seen the Mona Lisa than ever listened to Michael Jackson. And only 3 people can see it at once. Talk about impact.
Wow.
So first of all, he's wrong.
No way.
I mean,
he's getting it backwards, I feel like, on purpose.
Yeah, but I think it's so interesting because it really speaks to his
mindset.
And where his priorities lie, right?
Yeah.
And also, I think when we're speaking about, not just the posterity of art, but also, this leads us back to the Ionic original series as well, the aura of art, right? That the aura of a performance, the aura of a painting that you stand in front of, and the way you take that in, the feeling that you get from being in the theater and watching a performance live, seeing Bob Dylan live in concert, it will always be, a different experience than listening to a recording,
Yeah.
And I mean, it because you are there, because it's kind of like a direct interaction between you and the work and you and the performance. And clearly there's something that Bob Dylan is craving.
Yeah.
And I think he talks so often about this idea of songs being alive, and it makes so much sense that he wants to keep them in a live setting as well, right? And then it also makes sense that maybe he puts a different kind of, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say he puts more work into crafting a set list than crafting an album, because I don't think that's necessarily true. But he is clearly thinking about, how he wants to present the live show. And if I may add, the one work that I think brings all these things together, arguably, is Rough and Rowdy Ways. Because that album, Rough and Rowdy Ways, is also the backbone of his set list for many, many years. I mean, arguably still now. I mean, it's the Long Hot Summer Tour 2026, but a lot of Rough and Rowdy Ways songs creep into the set list. And for years, he's basically played the album all the way through. And so that, I don't know, I just wanted to.
Yeah. I also, did you want to bring on the DM you received about seeing Bob Dylan live? I feel like that's interesting.
Yeah. Hold on.
Yeah. There is like a sentiment that I hear a lot of, like, I'm going to see Bob Dylan just because he's a legend, because I can say I saw him. But I do think, although like the sentiment I feel mixed about, I think it is ultimately a good thing that people feel that way, that feel that seeing him in person holds some importance in history, if nothing else.
Yeah. I mean, the fact is also lots of people go to the Louvre to see the Mona Lisa, and not everyone will be, receptive to it.
True.
Some people only go so they can say they've seen it. Some people only go so they can take a picture on their phone,
Many such cases.
Many such cases. So the DM that I received from Rock and Roll Field Trip, who said, trying to decide if I should see Bob Dylan when I'm in Pittsburgh at the same time as him. I know that to you, this probably seems like an obvious. Do you know how this tour has been generally received so far this summer? And I don't think this qualifies as a meaty enough question for the pod, but if you like to touch on it in the pod, feel free to use the question.
Yeah, let's touch on it.
Yes.
Go.
Go. Yes, absolutely.
There's no way for us to predict how the show will go or how the audience will go. And there's certainly a chance that you're going to be near some drunk people who don't care about what's going on. But I think the experience of seeing Bob Dylan live is important enough, and you will have your own unique experience no matter what. And you will, and I think you should try to experience as much as you can in this life. And seeing Bob Dylan live is something everyone should try.
Preach. I think that's so true. And I think this show is so far. I mean, maybe I'm in a bubble. As possible.
Yeah.
I do concede that most of the people on my social media feed are Bob Dylan fans.
Mm-hmm.
But I think even in the media, what I've seen so far, the reception of these summer shows has been ecstatic. I think everyone agrees his voice is sounding beautiful and strong, and he is so dedicated to the performance. And the set list has been really, I mean, it's just been interesting and challenging in the most beautiful way. And the thing is, really, I mean, this might sound obvious, but when you go see Bob Dylan, you will really be able to say you've seen Bob Dylan. It's for in my opinion, for better, in the case of some people for worse, but it's you will get the artist that is Bob Dylan. And I don't know. I think that's a great thing. I think that in of itself makes it worth it.
Yeah. In short, yes, because he sounds good, and yes, because you should, to make your own life more interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, for one, I mean, I know it costs money to go, which takes us back to like what we talked about with Paul McCartney. But I don't think you should ever regret having paid the price of admission to see art.
Yeah. Don't tell me that. I gotta stop spending money to see these concerts. But I agree. I mean, I do it because I agree totally.
Yeah, I mean, tell me about it. I've been looking at flights because I'm like, maybe I should go over. Oh, speaking of which, also
we didn't talk about
this. Today, the first European tour date for autumn has been confirmed in Denmark. 3 dates.
Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. Yeah.
Oh my god, this is so exciting.
Yeah.
So he's coming back in the autumn. Like, this is just. I didn't dare to hope that he would be back again. He's now graced us 3 years in a row. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope he's coming to the UK.
Well, he's already across the pond. I saw that announcement. The venue in Denmark is Horsen Forum Horsen. I was like, horse forum? What's going on? I was like, oh, right. It's in another language. The beautiful language of Danish.
Yeah. And I'm already going to Denmark for a Bob Dylan conference in November.
Yeah.
I mean,
will it be at the same time?
October.
Oh,
no.
October. Close.
That'd be so fun if he was if he was coming to the conference. But
he loves
to hear me talk about Bob Dylan and AI. he just wants to know. He wants to know all about it.
You just see him sitting in the back with the hood up. Like the bad kid in the back of the classroom.
Taking notes furiously.
Yeah.
This was the Bob Dylan Hotline, and if you have any questions for us, please send us a voice memo to bobdylanhotline@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to answer it.
But the answer, my friend,
is blowing in the wind.